Hi everyone, this is Mr. Stewart here with your assignment video for week 9. Now this is going to be the beginning of the last assignment that we will work on for the next 3 weeks in level 1. And the beginning will be what's called either a pose test or a blocking pass. Pose test for hand-drawn animation, blocking pass for computer animation. And it's really important that you turn in your assignment on time because I will give you review videos in progress as you're going. So you'll do this blocking pass or this pose test, and I will give you feedback from that, and that will help you as you move forward to a more polished animation or finished animation stage at the end. So make sure you work on your assignments early and make time to be at Tech Time if you have questions so that I can give you the best chance you can have to do this amazing piece of animation that I know you've got inside of you. Okay, so the assignment is to have a character be curious about something, and there's no sound involved, and you can do it in either pencil or in Maya. And if in pencil you can do whatever character you want, you can use your character that you used for the previous assignment, or you can design another character. And for Maya, I have a little mini snowman character that you can use. And so that will allow you to move him around, and he'll move around very similarly to the bouncing ball. Now for this assignment, you're going to be using video reference. So the first stage of the assignment is to go out and to video yourself being curious about something. And you don't want to make it too big or too broad. 4 or 5 seconds probably is fine. Really don't want to get more than maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 is probably going to be kind of pushing it. So try to keep it simple and it can have something on the ground. It can be curious about an object that it runs across or anything. You can use your imagination for that and be creative. All right, so here is the little mini snowman character we have, and I'll go over the controls very quickly. So we'll start down at the bottom. This outer ring is kind of the master node, and this will move everything. You can turn it. You can scale it, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's not going to scale the face. Usually setting it at 1 is fine. So this is basically to position your character where you want it to be. So if you want your character to come in kind of and be curious about an object, so we'll create a little sphere and set it here. So if you want it to be curious about an object, then you can move that master node over, and you can even kind of turn it to face the object there. So the next set of controls inside is going to be the body node. Now the body node is the control that you're going to move the character on. If you grab some of these other ones, they'll move too, but they're not going to really, they're going to kind of rip the character apart rather than help it move. So as you do sort of a jumping motion, this is the control that you'll set keys on to do that. The next one up is the spine. Now you can move this around. You're going to get, there's no limits on the snowman here, but if you move it too far, you'll get some odd shapes. But if you want to rotate it and move it over a little bit, you can get some nice shapes for the snowman. This also does have a squash and stretch control on it here. So if you go over to the channel box, grab that, then you can squash and stretch the entire body and that's where you'll key that in. The next control up here at the top is the head, and this will move the head around. Now again, there's no control, there's no limits on this, so you can break it pretty easily. You have to just use your best judgment, but it does allow you to move it a little bit. And you can see that face sort of, it goes along with it, but the face is, it has some controls that you can use. The outer ring will move the face as a whole wherever you want. And then if you want to individually go in and move the different pieces, you can do that as well just by clicking on those pieces. And sometimes you'll have to kind of pull that out to line them up. But this way you can make a frown, and you can give a lot more expressions to the snowman. And if you ever want to put, yeah, I guess I pulled them out quite a bit, so you have to kind of go in from another angle and line them all up. And if you ever want to put everything back, if you grab all of those pieces and put all the translate and rotate pieces back, it's going to pull it right back to the beginning. And you can do that with actually all of the controls. So if you set everything at 0, except for the scale, you'll always set scale at 1, then you will be able to bring it back to a default pose. So you can, next thing we can look at the arms. Both arms are set up the same. There's only one control to rotate the arm. There's no elbow. And so it's a snowman that has no skeleton really, just that stick for an arm. And then the scale, you can shrink it or lengthen it. And then the circle around the 3 little fingers will move the whole hand, and then each individual finger can move. Again, it doesn't have any joints, so you just move those fingers if you want, like that. And I'm not going to get into the scarf controls just yet. I would say for this assignment, for this week, you don't even need to touch those. That will get into overlap in upcoming weeks. So those are the controls for the snowman. Okay, so when I am doing an animation, and the first thing I want to do is I want to start off with my video reference. So I'll go out and I'll record a piece of video reference, and I'll do a few that I like. You can do it with a phone, you can do it with a camera, anything that you can then bring back into your computer. And I like to bring it up in QuickTime. And the reason I do is because if you right click on this little area in QuickTime, usually you'll see a time code set up right there. But if you click on it, you can go to frame number. And this is really helpful to set up for timing for our poses that we're going to do. So I'm going to play through the video reference here. This is sort of my curious mode. So I'm trying to come up with different ideas. The last little bend down here is playing on the fact that with those arms that can't bend, it's probably going to be very difficult for the snowman to reach over and pick something up. So I can look through it, and I want to identify my major poses, the main poses that I'm going to have to work with. So actually this last one is going to be a main pose. It's going to be a pose that I'm going to, it's all of my animation is going to lead up to this pose. So I'm going to want to know where that is. So I can go to the place where it really kind of starts, and that's about frame 92, and I can create that pose. So I'm going to go to frame 92, and I'm starting at frame 100. I do that to sort of stay away from some of the keys that are in the rig. So if you look at this head and you bring up the graph editor, here you can see back here at 0, there's some keys. I want to leave these alone. Those are in the rig, and they are driving pieces of the geometry through something called set-driven keys, and I don't want to delete them. I don't want to mess with them. So I'm going to start my animation at frame 100, which is well over here, and I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I am go back to perspective mode here. So I'm going to go to, I'm just going to add 100, so I'm going to go to frame 192, and I'm going to set a key, frame 100 and 192, and I'm going to walk over here and kind of set my pose. Now, I'm going to want to do something that's probably, I'm going to want to kind of pick an angle, and I can do it in the perspective window, but I'm going to want to pick an angle that I generally know this is going to be my camera angle. This is where I'm going to do my play blasts from when I'm ready. And I'm not going to put an expression on now. I could, but for blocking, I might want to do one expression or maybe one or two, but I'm not going to want to worry about it too much. So I'm going to leave it like that. That's kind of my main pose. I'm going to set a key on everything and go back and set a key on that stuff as well for frame 100. Okay, I'm going to go back to my video reference, and I'm going to now kind of work on the hops in. So I know I'm going to have I'm going to look at my down positions first. So my frame 11, frame 19, frame 26, frame 34, and 41. So I know I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know I had 5 positions where they're going to be kind of the bounce positions, or the spots where the snowman's on the ground. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to find those frames, and then I'm going to create those poses. Okay, so you can see that I have now created these poses on these different frames. And here's the last one I have here, and I've adjusted my timeline a little bit here, brought it in a little bit. And if we go to the graph editor, you can see that now if I scroll through this, I'm just going to get this sort of movement forward here. Now that works fine, but that's getting more into animation, and we're not so much getting into that yet as we want to do a pose test. So we want to put it on what's called step tangents. So it's this stair step button right there. So if you click that, then you can see that now my poses are held until the next frame change. So this is very similar to what it would be like in pencil, where you do your pose and then you create another key and do your other pose, and it'll just hold that drawing or that image until the next keyframe. So that's the setting we want to have our keys on. So I've done all my bottom poses. Next I'm going to do the top poses where it's bouncing. So I go back to my video reference, I identify the frame that I want it to be on. So frame 14 is a good one. Frame 23 is a good one. And I'll go back and I'll do my keyframes there. Now the easiest way to do this is to then go to my key, and I can either right click on it and go up to tangent and hit spline, or I can select it here in the graph editor and hit spline or linear. And now you can see that I've got my keys turned on again. So go to frame 14, hit S to create a key for everything, and now I can go back and put it back to step mode. And this is where now I can go back in and create my key. So first thing I'm going to do is take off my squash and stretch. Next thing I'm going to do is take my body node and make it go up and down. So that's my translate Y that I want to use. And sometimes the arrows get off a little bit, so you kind of have to look and see which one is moving what. Translate Y is still, even though it doesn't look like it, it's still actually the one moving it up and down. So then I might put a little bit of extra movement on my arms, maybe a little bit of movement on my head, and maybe just a little bit of stretch. And then pull my face out there a little bit. So I can see you've got a little bit of movement there. Okay, so now I have all of those up spots done, and you can start to see a little bounce in that's happening. Now you can press this play button, but at this point it starts to get a little bit unreliable. It's always going to be the most reliable to do a play blast. So play blast it through. And this is going to give you a much better indication of your timing. So I have my little jump up through, I've checked that. Now I can always adjust my timing here, and if I want to make it happen a little bit faster, so I can put these together a little closer and make sure I've grabbed all the keys, but I'm gonna sharpen that up a little bit. So move the keys. And redo a play blast here. And you can see that my first key now I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to start the whole thing on frame 116 so that I don't get that weird jump from that beginning position, and just start on that first one. All right, so that's feeling pretty good. So the way I'm doing this little red thing, I hold the shift down, my middle mouse button, and I grab, I slide it over whatever frame range I want, and then if I play blast, it will only play blast that section in red. Now I'm going to do my next poses. So I go back to my video reference. I have one look over here at frame 57, another look over here maybe at 68. So I'm going to go to 57, set a key on everything, create my looking around pose, and I want to get a little bit of arm movement. And I can go back and between keys. Actually kind of like it with just more of the head movement. So I can hit the comma and that will go to my previous key, or I can hit the period and that will go to my next key. And that's a nice way to sort of be able to look in between those. And I can always delete it and start over if I don't like the key that's been created. And maybe move the face over a little bit. Move the eye. And now go to my next key, frame 68. And I'm going to start with this 141 drawing here, our image, and middle mouse copy, set the key over to frame 168 and create this turn here. It looks away. Okay, so I've done kind of my major poses, and now I want to use my memory of the principles of animation and use a little bit of anticipation. It's not so much in my reference, but I want to get an anticipation before he reaches down so that I really tell the audience what is happening here. So I'm going to actually have an anticipation up of my, since he's reaching down, I'm going to have the anticipation happen up. And you can see and make sure I get there's a little rotation on that. That's what's happening. So I want to make sure I get all of that working well. So I can find there's something a little bit odd. It kind of shifts over. So I want to go in the graph editor, look at my translations, and it looks like there's a translate X I don't really need. So I can pull that down. I can either delete it and then just set a new key and make sure that that's happening there as well. Check my rotations. Looks like there's a similar thing happening that I don't necessarily need there. So, and then put everything back to stepped. And you can see I get the little anticipation up, and he tries to bend down and get the ball. So and so this gives me a really good beginning to my timing. I want to maybe put a little bit of extra time on the end, but this is a blocking pose test. And so whether you do it in pencil or whether you do it in Maya, it's going to look similar to each other. So I can hide those curves, and I can do a play blast, a final play blast. So open the option box, I make sure I hit save to file. I can do from window or from render settings. If my window is a good shape, then I might as well just do from window, and it will save it. I can browse and find the place I want to save it to, and so I'll put in Snow Curious, hit save and hit play blast. And now if I want to go clean up the face on those frames, I can do that as well. But this gives me a really quick indication of what my animation is going to look like. So this is what you'll turn in, this movie file, or if you're doing it in pencil, then an image sequence for me to review. And then I'll review it and give you some indications of maybe where you could put in an extra pose or two, maybe sharpen up some timing, or talk about what to do for the next stage, where we'll start to in-between it out and make it look more fully animated. All right, so if you have any questions, you can always email me, but otherwise, good luck, and I will see you at the next class.